Capitol Hill was tense. The humid Washington air in May 2025 clung to the old limestone like a secret waiting to be revealed. It was supposed to be a routine Thursday, but nothing about this day would be routine. Not when whispers had begun to echo down the marble corridors of Congress. 6 million released? ICE, sabotage. At the center of the storm stood Representative Jim Jordan, firebrand conservative from Ohio's 4th District. His shirt sleeves rolled up as usual, passion in his eyes, and a manila envelope in his hand. Inside it was a classified memo that he claimed would shake the very core of national security. The memo had been leaked to Jordan by a whistleblower within Immigration and Customs Enforcement, an agent who had gone rogue after watching protocols crumble and borders bend under mysterious new directives. Across the aisle, Representative Jasmine Crockett, the fiery Democrat from Texas's 30th District, stood unfazed. Dubbed the wall breaker by progressive circles, she had become the face of immigration reform under President Biden's former administration. But now, under President Trump's second term, she had found herself on the defensive. Allegations were swirling that she had been pressuring ICE officials behind closed doors, even threatening budgetary cuts and legal action if certain emergency holds on migrant detainees were not lifted. The leaked memo, marked urgent, internal only, described a series of meetings between congressional Democrats and regional ICE directors in early February 2025. In those meetings, Representative Crockett had allegedly insisted that the detention of undocumented migrants was inhumane and systematically racist, and that ICE needed to immediately accelerate the release of nonviolent detainees, regardless of process. "Do you understand what's happening?" Jordan bellowed from the steps of the Capitol in a press briefing that felt more like a trial. "We're not talking about compassion here. We're talking about coordination. 6 million illegals released with no background checks, no vetting, some with cartel ties, some with prior deportations. This isn't a mistake. It's sabotage. And it's putting Americans at risk." The media scrambled. Cameras zoomed in on the words 6 million. Scrawled in red marker on a blown-up poster behind Jordan. Conservative outlets erupted with breaking coverage while mainstream networks struggled to verify the memo. Crockett, meanwhile, refused to respond directly until she was summoned before a rare joint Senate House Oversight Committee hearing. BY Saturday. The hashtag Crockett Sabotage was trending nationwide. Conservative activists flooded social media with allegations, while Democratic loyalists dismissed it as another Jordan stunt. A distraction from the border policies President Trump was enforcing with renewed force. Then came Sunday night. A Fox News special aired exclusive CCTV footage from an ICE holding facility in El Paso, Texas. It showed nearly 1,200 detainees walking out of the facility in a single night. No ankle monitors, no documents, just a silent release. The timestamp read, February 23, 2025, 1:16 a.m. Among the released, 2 known affiliates of the Sinaloa cartel, according to federal tracking reports that were never updated, because they were never flagged. That was the final spark. By Monday morning, the Senate floor was abuzz with calls for emergency hearings. Jordan, flanked by Representatives Byron Donalds and Marjorie Taylor Greene, demanded immediate subpoenas. "This isn't politics anymore," Jordan growled in a Fox News appearance. "This is national betrayal." And Jasmine Crockett? She finally broke her silence. "I will not be intimidated by political theatrics," she said in a tense MSNBC interview. "I have always acted in the interest of civil rights and humane policy. If Mr. Jordan wants a showdown, I welcome it. But be warned, I come with receipts too." The country was divided. Protesters lined outside the Capitol, some waving flags that said, "Protect our borders," others chanting, "Abolish ICE." The upcoming hearing promised to be historic, perhaps even constitutional in magnitude, as the Senate chamber prepared for what some called the most contentious oversight hearing in 2 decades. One thing was certain: America was about to witness a political collision that would leave a permanent scar on its national conscience. The towering Senate chamber brimmed with reporters, aides, and members of the public lucky, or unlucky, enough to snag a seat. The Oversight Committee's rare joint hearing was set to be broadcast live across all major networks, with Americans from rural Texas to upstate New York tuning in. The nameplate read REP, Jim Jordan, Ohio R. And beside him, like chess pieces ready to move, sat Representatives Byron Donalds and Elise Stefanik. The Democratic side was led by Representative Jasmine Crockett, whose sharp suits and sharper tongue had made her a media darling over the past year. But today, the tone was different. She sat stoic, her expression unreadable, flipping through a leather folder with neatly tabbed documents. Some speculated they were her own counterleaks. Others said they were legal briefs prepared by the Congressional Progressive Caucus top attorneys. Either way, the storm was coming. Gavel struck. Chairman Ron Johnson opened the hearing. This session will determine whether elected officials improperly influenced or interfered with ICE operations, resulting in the unvetted release of nearly 6 million undocumented immigrants. This is not about politics. It's about national security. Jordan wasted no time. Standing, pointing to a digital display behind him showing numbers and maps, he launched his opening salvo. Let's call this what it is: a deliberate dismantling of our border security apparatus. 6 million people. That's the population of Missouri. That's more than Los Angeles. And they were released, intentionally, unlawfully, and dangerously, on this woman's watch. He gestured to Crockett, whose jaw stiffened. Jordan clicked a remote, bringing up the El Paso footage again. This time, it zoomed in on a border enforcement supervisor speaking to someone on a secure call before waving detainees through the exit gate. Jordan pointed out the date, time, and facility directives, all traced back to an unsigned memo co-authored by legal consultants under Crockett's subcommittee. His voice sharpened. You lobbied ICE officials not just with suggestions, but with threats of budget slashes, DOJ referrals, and political smears if they didn't comply. Isn't that correct? Crockett leaned forward, microphone hot. Mr. Jordan, are you asking or performing? Because if it's the latter, your theatrics are showing. A wave of murmurs swept the chamber. I acted under my duty to ensure due process, not rubber-stamp mass incarceration of migrants in violation of the Geneva Convention. Jordan didn't flinch. Due process doesn't involve ignoring criminal backgrounds. One of the men released under your pressure, Jose Miguel Suarez, was arrested 3 years ago for trafficking weapons and fentanyl. And yet, there he goes, smiling as he walks free. Crockett fired back. Then blamed the Department of Justice for not pressing charges in time. ICE isn't supposed to be a death row pipeline. The room erupted in gasps. Chairman Johnson slammed the gavel again. Order. But the tone had shifted. The cordial veil of Congress was off. Now it was a courtroom. A battleground. Republic. Elise Stefanik produced a document. We obtained internal chat logs from ICE's Phoenix field office. Your name came up 47 times in 1 week, in relation to demands for expedited release quotas. Crockett smiled wryly. And how many of those quote-unquote demands were actual directives? Representative? Because what I've seen are exaggerated summaries of meetings that were entirely legal. Jordan pulled out his final weapon for the day, a sworn affidavit from ICE Deputy Director Manuel Ortega, who claimed he was personally told by Representative Crockett's aide to empty the low-level holding cells or face funding retaliation. That hit hard. Crockett turned toward the committee. If we're going to quote sworn statements, I have one from a Border Patrol agent who says you, Mr. Jordan, interfered with an asylum case for political purposes. Shall we unseal it? Jordan raised an eyebrow. Do it. I've got nothing to hide. The room buzzed again. This wasn't a hearing anymore. It was a war of attrition, and the American people were the jury. BY Day's End. Headlines screamed, Crockett versus Jordan. Border bombshells. 6 million released. Whistleblowers under oath next. Trump admin orders immediate border security review. President Trump, watching from Mar-a-Lago, issued a late-night Truth Social post. Jim Jordan is doing great work exposing the radical open border insanity of the Democrats. America first means accountability now. ICE must be protected. As night fell over Washington, the Senate building glowed like a fortress. The battle was far from over. Tuesday morning, the Capitol rotunda echoed with the shuffle of footsteps and the rustle of anticipation. A new figure stepped into the spotlight, ICE Deputy Director Manuel Ortega, the whistleblower whose affidavit had cracked the story wide open. The man was graying at the temples, composed but visibly nervous, dressed in a government-issued navy blue suit with a small American flag pin on his lapel. The room was silent when Chairman Johnson spoke. Deputy Director Ortega, you understand you are under oath. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, Ortega said, steadying his voice. Jim Jordan leaned forward, clasping his hands. Mr. Ortega, let's get straight to it. Did Representative Jasmine Crockett or her staff ever pressure you or your ICE colleagues to release detained individuals without proper documentation or review? Ortega inhaled. Cameras zoomed in. America held its breath. Yes, sir. Repeatedly. Gasps swept through the chamber. Ortega continued. Beginning in late January 2025, I was contacted by staff members from multiple congressional offices, including Representative Crockett's. At first, they made general inquiries about overcrowding and conditions, but those questions quickly escalated into specific requests, then demands for mass releases of detainees. Jordan interjected. Were these requests tied to any political threat? Yes. We were told that if we didn't comply with a humanitarian de-escalation initiative, funding for our operations would be placed under urgent review during the next budget cycle. Senator Josh Hawley, who had joined the committee for this hearing, leaned into his mic. You mean ICE agents were essentially being extorted into releasing illegal immigrants? Ortega nodded. That's exactly what it felt like. But it didn't end there. Ortega detailed a chilling scenario in February at the McAllen, Texas facility. We were instructed to prioritize expedited releases for low-threat profiles, he said. But when I pulled records, I found dozens of detainees listed with suspected gang affiliations and prior deportation orders. When I brought this up, I was told, quote, "Those are acceptable casualties in the larger fight for justice." Crockett shook her head, lips pressed tightly. When it was her turn to question Ortega, she went on the offensive. Mr. Ortega, are you claiming that every detainee your agency holds is a threat to national security? No, ma'am, Ortega replied respectfully. But I am saying it is our job to assess that threat, not yours. Crockett fired back. And when your own internal investigations show abuse and mistreatment in your detention centers, where is that same vigilance? Or does accountability only go one way? It was a clever pivot, but the room wasn't buying it. Not after Ortega began reading from a printed email chain. I have in front of me a February 3rd email from Representative Crockett's legislative director to ICE Chief Counsel in Region 6. It says, quote, "Failure to demonstrate movement on mass detainee reduction may result in subpoenas, oversight action, or punitive funding mechanisms. That is not oversight. That is coercion." The hammer had landed. Ortega's testimony continued for 2 hours, each moment unraveling a carefully buried operation. One that appeared to use bureaucratic language to do something deeply dangerous. He named names, shared dates, provided handwritten meeting notes that showed multiple left-wing nonprofits coordinating with Crockett's office on who should be prioritized for release. Meanwhile, outside the Capitol, hundreds of protesters gathered. On one side, signs reading "Secure our borders" and 6 million, no more lies. On the other, freedom for all and ICE is the real threat. Then came the kicker. Republic. Byron Donalds introduced a confidential memo from the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General's office. A preliminary report revealing that over 22,000 of the released migrants were currently unaccounted for, with over 1,100 under federal criminal investigation. Jordan pounced. That's not policy. That's an attack on our laws. You don't free 6 million people and hope for the best. Crockett, cornered, responded with a flare of righteous indignation. You don't get to pretend IC has been some perfect, unbiased machine. I've seen women abused in those cells. I've seen children traumatized. If you're more outraged about who got released than how we treated them, then your outrage is performative. But the narrative had shifted. The American public, rattled by Ortega's revelations and fearful of the numbers now flashing on every major news network, demanded clarity and accountability. That night, President Trump announced via press briefing, "We will not allow sabotage from within. I am directing the DOJ to launch a full investigation into illegal congressional interference in ICE operations. America is a nation of laws, not loopholes." And with that, Representative Jasmine Crockett was officially under federal scrutiny. May 18, 2025. Less than 24 hours after Deputy Director Ortega's damning testimony, Capitol Hill was a battleground of leaks and shifting loyalties. The political left found itself in disarray. Major Democratic leaders were caught off guard by the extent of the ICE scandal. Meanwhile, conservative media outlets were rolling out a new bombshell every hour. But the real gut punch came at 10:47 a.m. that morning. Fox News aired exclusive footage obtained from a whistleblower inside ICE headquarters, undisclosed security footage from a Zoom call involving Crockett's chief of staff, a progressive immigration lobbyist, and an unnamed ICE legal analyst. The grainy video, though poorly lit, carried clear audio. "The longer you hold these people, the worse the press coverage will get. We don't want another viral detention cell moment. Push the discretionary clauses. We'll cover you on the committee side." It was the smoking gun. The video went viral within minutes, trending on X under the hashtags #ICEDropgate and #6millionsabotage. Calls flooded into congressional hotlines from furious citizens, veterans, border agents, and small-town mayors alike. DNC headquarters went into lockdown mode. Sources reported a fiery closed-door session that afternoon with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries confronting Crockett directly. "You told us this was humanitarian work. You didn't say anything about pressuring federal agents to go rogue." Crockett, defiant but showing cracks, responded sharply, "I did what none of you had the guts to do. Face the human cost of our immigration failures. But some weren't buying it." An anonymous Democrat from a swing district reportedly told CNN. Jasmine Crockett just handed Trump a weapon going into 2026. She's turned ICE into a scandal factory, and we're the ones choking on the smoke. On the other side of the aisle, Jim Jordan had become a media juggernaut. That same night, he appeared on Hannity for a live town hall special from Dayton, Ohio. Sean Hannity turned to Jordan with his signature smirk. "Congressman, is this the biggest political scandal involving immigration we've ever seen?" Jordan leaned forward, eyes burning with determination. "Sean, it's not just about immigration. It's about institutional betrayal. When you release 6 million people without vetting, you're not practicing compassion. You're playing roulette with American lives. And now we have proof that some in Congress were pulling the strings." The crowd erupted in applause. Back in Washington, House Speaker Mike Johnson announced an emergency motion to form a select committee on congressional overreach into federal law enforcement, with bipartisan backing. The scope of the committee would now include not only Crockett, but any member of Congress or staffer involved in pressuring federal agencies for politically motivated outcomes. That night, the pressure reached a boiling point. Leaked reports from the Department of Justice confirmed that 4 ICE regional directors had retained legal counsel, anticipating subpoenas. Meanwhile, 2 aides in Crockett's office resigned, citing unforeseen ethical conflicts. But most shocking was this. An internal email from March 2025, just weeks before the releases began, surfaced from an anonymous source on Capitol Hill. The subject line? "Winning the narrative." The body of the email included talking points for members of the Progressive Caucus. Emphasize humanity over legality. Frame releases as a moral reckoning, not political risk. Encourage ICE's internal conflict. Division slows enforcement. When Representative Byron Donalds read the email on the House floor, the silence was thunderous. This wasn't policy. This was a plot. Public reaction reached fever pitch. A Rasmussen poll released that evening showed 62% of Americans now believed congressional Democrats had improperly interfered with immigration enforcement. That same day, President Donald Trump signed an executive order, temporarily reinstating Trump-era ICE restrictions and deploying National Guard reinforcements to major southern border crossing points. "We are putting America first. Again, those responsible will be held accountable, whoever they are, wherever they are." But Crockett? She wasn't backing down. That night, in a surprise appearance on MSNBC's The Readout, she faced the cameras head-on. Let's be clear. I didn't sabotage ICE. I saved lives. If Jim Jordan wants to turn this into a witch hunt, fine. But history will remember who stood up for the voiceless and who cowered behind a wall. The anchor gave her a nod, but even her allies were shaken. Because now, federal subpoenas were in motion. The wheels of justice had begun to turn. May 28, 2025. The Senate floor was electric. Senators filled their seats as America tuned in for the special joint hearing on congressional interference in immigration enforcement. It was the first such hearing of its kind since the McCarthy-era investigations, and for many, it symbolized the new age of political accountability under President Donald Trump's second term. Jim Jordan stood beside Vice President J.D. Vance, now serving as co-chair of the Joint Task Force. With steely resolve, Jordan opened the hearing. "We're not here to score political points. We're here to restore trust in the rule of law. What happened with ICE was not just a policy error. It was a breach of public trust that put American lives in jeopardy." As the gavel fell, the room hushed for the marquee witness. ICE Officer Carla Henley, a frontline veteran of 17 years stationed in Tucson, Arizona. "Congress threatened us with legal consequences if we didn't comply," she said. "I watched known cartel affiliates, men we'd arrested with narcotics and weapons, walk out the back gate without paperwork, without proper background vetting, just because someone from Washington said, 'Let it go.'" She looked down at her prepared notes, voice shaking. "I have a son. He's 12. And I had to explain to him that his country now values messaging over safety." Gasps and a few tears rippled through the chamber. The revelations didn't stop there. Senator Tom Cotton entered into the record a classified Department of Homeland Security report that had been hastily declassified for the hearing. The report included biometric analysis showing that over 900 foreign nationals with existing red notices from Interpol were among the 6 million migrants released under the discretionary release protocol, linked to Representative Crockett's office. Cotton thundered. This wasn't soft-hearted humanitarianism. This was organized recklessness, bureaucratic sabotage disguised as compassion. The next 2 days became a blur of testimony, leaked emails, and mounting political pressure. Across America, political talk shows, church groups, border communities, and veterans forums began calling the scandal the Great Release. And just when the fire seemed like it couldn't burn any hotter, a bombshell from inside the DOJ landed like a missile. A former paralegal from Crockett's legal team came forward under whistleblower protection, revealing that some of the nonprofit advocacy groups coordinating with her office had received millions in federal grants after Crockett intervened in ICE operations. The implication: a possible quid pro quo, facilitate mass releases, secure funding, and build progressive influence under the radar. Now the ethics violations weren't just moral, they were criminal. Attorney General Pam Bondi, addressing the nation alongside President Trump, announced, "The Department of Justice has initiated a formal inquiry into potential obstruction of justice, abuse of congressional authority, and fraudulent appropriation of federal funds. No one is above the law." Jasmine Crockett, for the first time since the scandal broke, went silent. Her office issued a carefully worded statement. Representative Crockett stands by her decisions and will cooperate with all investigations. She remains committed to her constituents and to the principles of due process. But behind the scenes, allies were deserting her. Major donors pulled back. A planned re-election fundraiser in Dallas was canceled amid protest threats. And in private DNC briefings, whispers grew louder. She's become radioactive. Jim Jordan, for his part, remained relentless. In a fiery CNN interview, he declared, "This isn't about vengeance. It's about restoring the people's faith in their government. If Congress can start releasing criminals behind closed doors, then what are we even doing here?" The tipping point in June 1st, the House voted 267 to 161 in favor of initiating formal censure proceedings against Representative Jasmine Crockett, including 48 Democrats who crossed the aisle. It was a humiliating political moment, the first such bipartisan censure in nearly a century. That evening, on the steps of the Capitol, Jim Jordan gave an impromptu press conference. He held up the thick stack of redacted memos, whistleblower testimonies, and ICE internal reports. This isn't over, he said, but it's a start. The American people deserve leaders who don't trade their safety for social media likes or activist applause. As cameras flashed and supporters cheered, the message was clear. The era of quiet sabotage was over. 3 weeks later, Rasmussen's June poll would show that immigration had returned as the #1 concern for American voters. President Trump's approval rating had climbed to 54%, and Jim Jordan's name was now circulating as a potential 2028 presidential contender. As for Jasmine Crockett, she remained in office, embattled but defiant, facing ongoing investigations and a primary challenge from within her own party. But for millions of Americans, one question remained, printed across t-shirts, bumper stickers, and protest banners nationwide. Who let 6 million in? And the answer? They would remember it every time they went to the polls.